Key takeaways from Super Tuesday results. Super Tuesday wasn't as super this year due to a slew of predictable results, but there were a few surprises and some warning signs for Donald Trump and Joe Biden ahead of their expected rematch in November. Here are some of the key takeaways after millions of voters in 15 states and American Samoa chose their preferred party candidates for president. Full steam ahead for Trump. He posted a dominant performance, with wins in states across the country. They call it Super Tuesday for a reason, Mr. Trump told supporters in Florida. This is a big one. Some of the victories were staggering in their size. A 70% margin in Alabama, 61% in Texas, some 70% of the vote in California. He will walk away with a near insurmountable lead in convention delegates, even if he will have to wait until next week to mathematically lock the Republican nomination. Exit polls give some indication of why the former president won so big. In North Carolina, 43% of Republican primary voters said immigration was the most important issue for them, a topic that has been at the top of Mr. Trump's political agenda since he launched his first presidential bid in 2015. In Virginia, 64% said that they trusted Mr. Trump over Nikki Haley on border security. Those Virginia primary voters also said they wanted a candidate who shares their values and fights for people like them, qualities that tilt toward Trump over temperament and electability. Electability was one of Ms. Haley's central pitches to voters. It apparently fell flat. Exit polls once again made clear that a majority of Republicans don't believe the false claim that Mr. Trump lost in 2020, with only 34% of Republican voters in North Carolina saying Mr. Biden won that election legitimately. Live results and analysis. But there were some alarm bells. Despite the big win, there were indications of continued disaffection with the former president among Republican primary voters. In Virginia and North Carolina, Ms. Haley continued to do well in counties with large numbers of young, suburban and college-educated voters, and some of their concerns registered in exit polls. 40% of Republican primary voters in Virginia and 32% in North Carolina said that Mr. Trump, who faces 4 criminal cases, would not be fit to be president if convicted of a crime. Among North Carolina Haley voters, only 21% said they would vote for the Republican nominee, no matter who it is. Late on Tuesday night, the Haley campaign pointed to such results and issued a warning. Today, in state after state, there remains a large block of Republican primary voters who are expressing deep concerns about Donald Trump, a spokeswoman said. Of course, opinions could change in the heat of the autumn general election campaign. Back in 2016, exit polls found that 75% of non-Trump voters said they would be dissatisfied with Mr. Trump as the Republican nominee. In the end, 90% of Republicans backed him against Hillary Clinton. Nikki Haley's Vermont surprise. The former South Carolina governor opted not to hold a public event on the evening of Super Tuesday, perhaps reflecting the campaign's belief that there would be little to celebrate from the day's results. She should have held a victory party in Vermont. Despite polls showing her trailing badly in the small northeastern state, the South Carolina native pulled out a narrow win there, her second victory of the primary season. Ms. Haley campaigned in Burlington on Sunday alongside the state's popular Republican governor, Phil Scott, who said Republicans, independents and Democrats should join together to stop Mr. Trump. In Vermont it worked. In all the other Super Tuesday contests, however, there simply weren't enough anti-Trump voters, even in states like Virginia that allow non-Republicans to vote in the party primary, to translate into wins or even narrow defeats. Weeks ago Ms. Haley pledged to stay in the race through Super Tuesday, hoping to add to her delegate total. Tuesday's results will do that, but not in any substantial amount. Now the waiting game commences for when, and how, she will throw in the towel. Earlier this week, she said she did not feel committed, despite an earlier pledge, to support Mr. Trump if he is the party's nominee. Will she ultimately back the former president, despite her recent sharp criticisms? Is she angling for an independent presidential bid? With all the drama now stripped out of the nominating contests, the South Carolinian's future is one of the few immediate sources of mystery. Biden struggles to shake Gaza protest vote. In the Michigan primary last week, more than 100,000 voters, 12% of the total, turned out to cast ballots for uncommitted instead of for the incumbent president as part of an organized Gaza war protest. That phenomenon reared its head again on Tuesday. In Minnesota, uncommitted garnered approximately 20% of the vote and topped that mark in the counties around Minneapolis, the state's largest city. In North Carolina, one of the few true general election battleground states on the Super Tuesday schedule, 12% of voters opted for no preference. Tonight's numbers showed that President Biden cannot earn back our votes with just rhetoric, vote uncommitted MN spokesperson Asma Nizami said in a press statement. Over 35,000 Minnesotans made it clear that Democrats want Joe Biden to change his policies. Pro-Palestinian groups are already targeting next week's primary in Washington state, which has a sizable left-wing activist population. If the Biden campaign were hoping that Michigan, with its large population of Arab Americans, was the beginning and end of the anti-Biden protest vote, Tuesday will be a rude awakening.